who actually happened to see, but in my room, it was a safe space for them, and I hope they know that I was grateful because every time they left the room, I made sure that I said thank you. And he was like, well, you'd be surprised how many people don't.
That's funny.
I was like, well, they work hard. Right. Right. I mean, I'm grateful for that. But we had it was crazy.
Unitarian Universalist Church, building community, inspiring growth, creating change. Here in the heart of Kansas City, we come together to create this hour of shared reflection so that we might be renewed in courage for these times and inspired to lives of greater dignity, higher purpose, deeper generosity, and more effective action. May the words and music and images that we offer today nourish our best selves, calling forth abundant wisdom and love, a love that has the power to overcome both loneliness in the heart and oppression in the world. Welcome to our service.
Arise, O souls, arise.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Scott England, a member of All Souls, and proud to be your moderator today. This is my first time doing this job at the podium. I've done lots of other speaking up here. So whether you're here in the room or watching online, we're glad that you're here, especially on this beautiful late summer Sunday morning. Your presence enriches all of us and our time together. We are a Unitarian Universalist congregation. What that means is that our tradition is a large tent with room for many beliefs and approaches to the questions that matter. It is our values of inclusion, compassion, and justice that hold us together. We seek to build the beloved community, making room for everyone and creating a world where everyone's needs are met. You may be new here this morning. If so, welcome. We know that your first time attending a church, you may just want to keep a low profile and check things out quietly. That's great. We're glad you're here. But if you're a visitor and are excited to let us know that you are, we invite you to raise your hand at this time. Right? Welcome. Thank you for enriching all of us with your presence today. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. Whether you come with laughter in your heart or tears, you are welcome here. You are invited to join us with an open mind, a loving heart, and willing hands. We welcome you today.
I am the Reverend Erin Dyke-Holly, and I am thrilled to see all of you here this morning. Before you leave the Bragg Auditorium, I want to make sure that you take a look above that door so that you see where we put the big thing from our float from the Pride Parade. For those of you who are not in the room, we had, for the Pride Parade, a huge heart with the flame out of the top, so the heart was the chalice that has the Progress Pride flag and the word love on it. And it is huge. And we welcome it indoors, where it will not be damaged by the weather until June. Also, please note that I will be leading a UU Basics class at noon in the library for newcomers who want to learn a bit about Unitarian Universalism, and it's a safe space to ask all of your questions about All Souls. That will start at noon in the library. And I am also so delighted to introduce all of you to my friend and colleague, the Reverend Cotter Coillberg. Reverend Caitlin is a community minister in Silver Spring, Maryland, which is very near DC, where she lives with her spouse and 2 young children. A third-generation Unitarian Universalist, she first felt the call to ministry as a youth leader in Knoxville, Tennessee. Reverend Caitlin attended seminary in Berkeley, California, and has served as a Unitarian Universalist religious professional in California, Minnesota, where I met her, West Virginia, Maryland, and beyond. She is a joy-centered, award-winning preacher, passionate about multi-generational and interfaith community. Unitarian Universalist history, environmental justice, anti-oppression and anti-racism work, naps, and whimsy as a spiritual practice. Good morning, Caitlin.
Good morning, beloved. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Excellent.
So what is it like in Silver Spring, Maryland right now?
Oh, it's this fascinating thing where we're all living our lives while dealing with the stress of what's happening in DC right now, right? The last congregation I served was mostly federal workers. So people were getting laid off and living with that anxiety about getting laid off. It's funny, I feel like I see it most in like how bad people's driving suddenly is. Like everyone around here is just like, or one of my dear friends is a colorectal surgeon. So she says that she can tell everyone's really stressed by how tight everyone's sphincter is right now. So the sphincter index is pretty bad for the DC area right now. I would.
Thank you, dear.
So, but I am great. I had my anniversary yesterday. And can you believe it, Erin? My eldest starts kindergarten tomorrow.
What?
I know.
Oh my gosh, sorry. I have not seen Caitlin's children in like 3.5 years, and so it just astounds me that Devlin is, wow. Okay, I'm gonna get over that, and also happy anniversary to you and Ash. I met you like just weeks before that.
I know, you helped us move into that apartment, and then we were like, all right, see you later. We're gonna go get married.
Yep. It's okay. It was wonderful. We celebrated from afar. So,
yes.
Welcome to All Souls, my dear one. And please share with us some opening words.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so delighted to be with you all today. Ahoy and welcome to you, landlubbers and seafarers, wanderers and lighthouse tenders, rebels and rule makers, and those whose brains and being defy categories and closets. May we be good shipmates to each other here, ready to work together to take in sail in rough seas, to breathe through the windless doldrum times, to stand our watch so others can rest, answering smartly to the call of all hands on deck when needed, and doing what it takes to sustain each other for the long haul. May we say aye aye to joy and belay that to cynicism and despair, coming about to wonder and curiosity, welcoming aboard compassion and courage and creativity, prepared to parlay and to honor codes and covenants. Though we've broken our vows 1,000 times, let us weigh anchor to set sail again, steering our way by love, honoring the work we do with and for each other, setting our sail, setting our course for mutual liberation. Come, let us worship together.
Our chalice lighting is from the Oberlin UU Fellowship in Oberlin, Ohio. We light this chalice to find inner peace, love for each other, and faith in ourselves. Also, to be welcoming to whomever we meet and kind to all living creatures. So gather around this light of hope as we share this time together. And now, I invite you to stand in body or spirit to join in reading our covenant and then remain standing for our first song. Together we affirm, goodwill is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
So the story I have for you today is The Pirate Tree by Rita Orell and Jenny Poe. And we're going to have some slides so you can see those pictures as I read this story for you. The gnarled tree on the hill sometimes turns into a pirate ship. A rope serves as an anchor, a sheet as a sail, and Sam is its fearless captain. Today, the tree watches as another sailor approaches. Can I play? Agu asks, standing on the ship's leeward side. Sam hoists the sheet up over a branch and glares. I don't know you. You're not from my street. Agu's face falls. He watches her struggle with a thick rope. No one wants to play with him because he's a newcomer. Beware, here come pirates, Sam yells. Arr! When Sam doesn't so much as look his way, Agu's shoulders slump. Auntie told him to be patient, but he's been patient for days. We go sailing the warm South Seas, Sam sings, stealing cargo off mighty ships, robbing diamonds in Nigeria, gold from... Agu snorts. There are no diamonds in Nigeria. Sam pauses. The sheet collapses as she lets go of the twine. How do you know? I used to live in Nigeria. Sam's eyes widen. Then she frowns. What else do you know? I sailed on a ship. I can tell you about it, Agu says, his voice rising. They set sail again. The breeze is generous and the ocean is wide before them. They land on a deserted island and find fresh coconuts and precious seashells. Agu shows Sam how to reef the mainsail when the wind gets fierce. They're about to round Cape Horn when Dad calls from the yard. Sam, dinner time. The cook is calling from the alley, Sam says. From the galley, Sam says. Come, let's go and see what he's caught. Agu coils the thick rope Sam used for an anchor. What's your name then? Sam asks, bunching the sheet under her arm. I'm Agu. They set off down the slope, treading through waves of grass. A cool name for a pirate, Sam says. It means tiger. Sam grins at her new crew member. You'll sail with me again, won't you? They are too far away for the tree to hear Agu's answer. Its boughs sigh in the zephyr, waiting for the day it will turn into a pirate ship again and sail the distant seas with two new friends. Our adventures are better when we welcome and listen to each other across our differences. And in that spirit, we now expand our worship as the children head to their classes and we sing them on their way.
Ahoy! My name is Russ Feldhausen, and I'm a member of this church. Allow me to set a scene for you. A ship at sea, rolling waves, the call of seagulls, the salty smell in the air, a group of your favorite fictional swashbucklers busily working upon the deck of a large sailing ship. And of course, this is fiction, so they all smell of flowers and soap and have excellent personal hygiene. The captain blows his whistle on the deck to gather the crew for an important message. Aye, ye mateys, we be setting sail into harsh waters. The winds are afoul, and we expect many broadsides against our pirate code of mutual respect for all. Shiver me timbers, there be tough times ahead, and it will take hard work and dedication to persevere, lest we find ourselves marooned. Me hearties, I look upon this ragtag crew from all walks of life, and I see the greatest treasure any pirate could acquire. Our community is our strength, and by working together toward a common goal, we can anchor ourselves in even the stormiest seas. Avast, but our mutual coffer could always use more coin. That loot that pays to swab the decks and maintain the mizzen mast and empty the bilge, and it even helps us share the good grog on cold mornings. This day, I'm asking for you to look in your own treasure hoards and find some pieces of 8 or 10s or 20s to share toward our mutual endeavors. This ain't no hornswoggle. Your shared loot helps keep this ship afloat and supports our shared mission to provide a space for everyone. The offering will now be given and gratefully received. Please join me in the dedication for the offering. We dedicate our offerings and our actions to the mission at the heart of this congregation: to build a respectful, caring community, to inspire personal and spiritual growth, and to create change toward a just and compassionate society.
Friends, I invite you now into the spirit of prayer or meditation. I invite you to get comfortable in your seats, to perhaps rest your hands in your lap or your feet on the floor. You may wish to close your eyes or let your eyes gently unfocus. Spirit of life and love, here we rest together in this moment, seated upon the solid soil of our turtle island, and yet also together and separately at sea. What can guide us in these uncertain, terrifying, turbulent times? What ballast will be weighty enough? What ship's keel deep enough to keep us upright on this rough and ready sea? We turn to each other again and again, looking to each other for encouragement and support, looking to our shared values and agreements as a map to chart our course, letting love be the force that guides us, compassion and courage, the wind in our sails and the hand on our rudder. Inviting each other to be present with the beauty and the danger of each precious and precarious day. Awake to our shared responsibility and humanity as we journey together through uncharted waters. May we hear the call of adventure and whimsy and joy, be comforted by the music we create in our quiet moments, and know ourselves to be loved and capable of loving. May we rest in our belonging here, in this space and time, rest in the calming glitter of ever-shifting light and air, the rhythms of the seafaring life, and the possibilities and potential that still flourish all around us. These things we pray in the name of all that is good, true, and holy. Amen.
In a lecture to a group of architects in 1967 Paris, titled Of Other Spaces, philosopher Michel Foucault said, in words translated from the French in 1984 by J. Miskowicz, utopias are sites with no real place. They are sites that have a general relation of direct or inverted analogy with the real space of society. They present society itself in a perfected form, or else society turned upside down. But in any case, these utopias are fundamentally unreal places. There are also, probably in every culture, in every civilization, real places. Places that do exist and are formed in the very founding of society, which are something like counter sites, a kind of effectively enacted utopia in which the real sites, all the other real sites that can be found within the culture, are simultaneously represented, contested, and inverted. Places of this kind are outside of all places, even though it may be possible to indicate their location in reality. Because these places are absolutely different from all the sites that they reflect and speak about. I shall call them, by way of contrast to utopias, heterotopias. There is probably not a single culture in the world that fails to constitute heterotopias, but that is a constant in every human group. But the heterotopias obviously take quite varied forms, and perhaps no one absolutely universal form of heterotopia would be found. The boat is a floating piece of space, a place without place, that exists by itself, that is closed in on itself, and at the same time is given over to the infinity of the sea, and that from port to port, from tack to tack, it goes as far as the colonies in search of the most precious treasures they conceal in their gardens. You will understand why the boat has not only been, for our civilization from the 16th century until the present, the great instrument of economic development for some, and extraction and exploitation for others, but has been simultaneously the greatest reserve of the imagination. The ship is the heterotopia par excellence. In civilizations without boats, dreams dry up, espionage takes the place of adventure, and the police take the place of the pirates.
Thank you, Aaron, and thank you, Anthony. It is hard, activist anthropologist and anarchist David Grieber says, as the opening line of the last book he published before his death, to be objective about pirates. He notes that most historians don't even try, and that the literature on the subject is sharply divided between romantic celebrations of golden age piracy and popular literature and scholarly debates over whether pirates should be best viewed as proto-revolutionaries or as simple murderers, rapists, and thieves. There are, he notes, lots of different kinds of pirates. Even if you were only talking about the golden age of piracy, that period of maybe 50 years of nautical history at the end of the 1600s until 1629 that continues to inspire all kinds of popular culture. And it's worth noting that we remember a lot of those pirates as incredibly scary and violent because the primary weapon they used was terror. That's why the flag was a skull and crossbones, often with an hourglass. It's propaganda. We're a ship of death. We know our time is ticking. We've got nothing to lose, so just give up right now. So much better, right? To have the ship you are chasing give up in fear so you don't have to fight, especially if you are fighting in solidarity with your fellow working class seamen. You want to take over that ship without fighting and then recruit the crew. Right? So there are many different kinds of pirates, Graeber notes, but many did indeed create, however briefly, a kind of rebel culture and civilization that, though surely brutal in many ways, developed its own moral code and democratic institutions. Perhaps the best that could be said of them is that their brutality was in no way unusual by the standards of their time, but their democratic practices were almost completely unprecedented. This is the sort of pirate most appreciated by radical historians, folks like my history professor at Bryn Mawr College, where I went to undergrad, and Marcus Rediker, who writes bottom-up history, a version of what the late, great Howard Zinn called people's history. Any of y'all fans of Howard Zinn? Howard Zinn. Anyway, so Marcus Rediker writes about the maritime peoples in the Atlantic he studies, from Black folks escaping enslavement to Irish dockhands to the working folks of many backgrounds and nations who mutinied and went pirate in a desperate attempt to seek justice for the common sailor. One of my beloved seminary professors, Unitarian historian Reverend Dr. Susan Ritchie, particularly notes in a podcast about the proto-Unitarian Puritans of New England and the pirates they executed that the pirates had their own ideas about covenant, a tradition dating back to the days of the earliest buccaneers who lived communally, but it was also influenced by religious radicals. Radicals, right, had fled England in the mid-17th century to settle in the West Indies. And these religious radicals, some of whom were anti-Trinitarian, they all practiced a form of congregational polity that was grounded in covenant and democracy and was far more radical than anything anyone had seen in Boston. So it's known to a lot of 8, 9, and 10-year-olds, that pirates themselves had codes about how they would conduct themselves. And this is a true thing, right? The pirate code was a real thing. They had these kind of operational covenants between themselves and agreements to which they would sign their names before they would embark together on a journey. And some of them were pretty radical in terms of not just making contracts, but how treasure would be divided up, but also a commitment to take care of anybody who might be injured in the course of their adventures. And of course, also the captain of a pirate ship could be overthrown by the democratic vote of his people. When you think about it, in some weird ways, the pirates and the Puritans had quite a bit in common because they're both groups of people who hated hierarchy, who associated hierarchy with oppression, and who longed to find some kind of place on the earth where their personal practice wasn't dictated by the state. When you think about it, the one place on earth where we would be free of direct interference of state was on the open sea, right? There's a reason that Foucault picked the sailing ship, and specifically a romanticized version of the early modern pirate ship, as his ultimate version of the heterotopia, as Aaron read. And, right, there were really good reasons why those sailors who practiced these radical forms of democracy went pirate. Like, they weren't just doing it for kicks. It wasn't dinner theater. Life as a working class sailor in the 16 and 1700s was horrific. It was a life of, as Marcus Rediker points out, cramped quarters, poor victuals, brutal discipline, low wages, devastating diseases, disabling accidents, and premature death, right? Most of the folks who turned pirate for whatever reason, who became villains of all nations against all flags, anyone else like that Errol Flynn movie? And at war with the big companies of their time and the nations that did violence in protection of those companies, they only lived that life for a year or two. But for that year or two, they had ready money, an abundance of food and drink, equity and shared resources, care for the injured, and joyous camaraderie. All, as Rita explains it, as expressions of an ethic of justice. They were sometimes pretty literally expressing or acting out justice, not just in the mock trials they held for each other where they acted out their own fates before the courts of land as a form of dark humor coping mechanism. I've been seeing a lot of dark humor coping mechanisms online and in my conversations lately. Anyone else been seeing a lot of that? Right, I really feel the pirates on that one. Anyway, so one of the things that they would do when they took over the ship was they would put the officers on trial with the crew as their witnesses. They would interview the crew to recruit them for their pirate cause, but also to determine how awful their specific working circumstances were. One of my favorite stories from that 300 level early modern pirate class I took in undergrad is this one account of a crew who testified that their captain was actually really great. So the pirates gave this great captain a bunch of treasure and they put him in a little boat and they let him go free. They were like, well done, good job, thank you. They still took a ship, but they did let him go free. Can you imagine a roving force of theatrical, healthcare-centered, democratically organized blue-collar workers doing something similar today? Holding CEOs of abusive companies responsible for the harm they do, going on a strike so extreme that it includes kicking the CEOs off of literal ships and then going around and liberating other companies, other ships. Sounds kind of like a more violent version of the general strike folks are calling for to save our democracy and this country now, right? Sometimes when injustice becomes so extreme, when folks don't have food to eat and healthcare becomes inaccessible, when nations are ramping up their violence against civilians or anyone who's different, when folks are finding it unsafe or impossible to work, we maybe have a glimmer of an understanding of why those sailors turned pirate. It's the same reason the mine wars broke out in West Virginia 100 years ago, though they wore their red bandanas around their necks, right? This is where one of the way it plays is the redneck comes from. It's from striking mine workers instead of, they didn't wear it in the pirate way, right? The pirate wear it. It's the same reason the women of the textile mills and sewing factories went on strike 100 years ago, chanting it was not just red they fought for roses too. I've been thinking about those histories a lot as we approach Labor Day 2025, as the calls for a general strike grow louder. And I'm thinking about what we can create and we can model as Unitarian Universalists, as the descendants of the Puritans, as I contemplate pirate history. The pirates of the early 1700s were not just at war with the brutality and oppression of merchant ships and the Royal Navy, they were living out a story of a different way of doing things, a different way of being. Not utopias, but heterotopias, where things were settled democratically, the injured were cared for, and all were comrades to each other. But there was also a pirate utopia. The story was that in the 1700s, a group of pirates who had spent their early careers in the Caribbean hanging out with those radical religious folks that my professor talked about, right? Those anti-Trinitarians. settled in Madagascar and created, in collaboration with the indigenous people living there, a mythical place called Libertatia or Libertalia. Libertalia was a utopian place, like Wakanda or Atlantis or Barbie Land. Specifically, it was a pirate utopia popular in the imaginations of Europeans of that era. Marcus Rediker wrote, "These pirates who settled in Libertalia would be vigilant guardians of the people's rights and liberties. They would stand as barriers against the rich and powerful of their day. By waging war on behalf of the oppressed against the oppressors, they would see that justice was equally distributed. In Libertatia, all are governed by an elected council. In Libertatia, all humans are equal regardless of color, customs, or religious rights. In Libertalia, leadership is open to all without distinction of nation or color." English professor Lincoln Fowler described Libertatia as an integrated, harmonious, multiracial, and anti-imperialist society, a flourishing democratic pirate utopia funded by the booty captured off of Spanish galleons, Portuguese men of war, French brigantines, and English schooners, making those pirates oceanic Robin Hoods, stealing from the colonizers to fund their socialist experiment. Libertatia was described by that 18th century professor as a place committed to political and economic justice that was defiant against human bondage at the height of the transatlantic slave trade. The Libertatians were said to attack slave ships and liberate the enslaved persons found there, many of whom chose to become citizens of Libertalia. This was something actually that a lot of Golden Age pirates did, taking over slave ships and freeing the enslaved. You can imagine how the forces of empire felt about that. Marcus Rediker has long argued that whether or not Libertalia actually existed, this kind of radical liberatory democracy founded in consensus-based decision-making definitely existed in miniature in the form of many pirate ships of the Golden Era. Kind of like Barbie Land might not exist, but women's colleges and Girl Scout camps do. What's exciting about David Graeber's last book is that he suggests that a form of Libertalia did exist. This is why I got super excited when I found his little book. There were no pirate kings of Madagascar, but there were apparently democratically elected pirate captains of land-based pirate communities, places where pirates married into indigenous communities and used their highly developed conflict resolution skills in an official capacity for the locals. And their descendants are apparently still there. They weren't all murdered by the emerging nation states. Some of them survived. Remember earlier when I was like, so you could be a pirate for like a year or two, but then you'd probably be murdered by the nation states. Well, apparently not all of them were murdered. Some of them survived. And the Libertalia myth was started on purpose by some of those pirates. They intentionally created this mythos of pirate kingdoms, even going so far as to send representatives of their mythical kingdoms to meet with European monarchs and creating entire dramatic role play situations where they pretended to have little monarchies with their own courts and kingdoms to bamboozle visitors to their shores. So it's like if we pretended Ren fairs were real countries and someone from the Ren fair went to Denmark and was like, yes, I come from Marylandia and you should trade with us, right? Like, what? Real pirate history is even weirder and even more intense than your favorite pirate shows and movies. And I love David Graeber discovered this history completely by accident. He was doing some other research in Madagascar and dated a pirate descendant. And she was like, oh yeah, let me tell you about this. Even for the guy who helped launch the Occupy movement and the phrase the 99% that redefined how we think about our economic structure. That's pretty wild. I'm like, he's not even really necessarily a historian. He's an anarchist anthropologist, or was. He's dead now. I guess sometimes you just get pulled in to piracy. And this is exciting for me because it gives us a different glimpse into what is possible. Not just short-term covenanted communities of the sea, but something deeper and longer lasting, something we can understand even if we've never set sail on a sailing vessel or set foot in a Renaissance fair. And this is exciting in part because most pirates of the sort that radical historians particularly like weren't particularly successful, right? They may have had similar ideas to the Puritans, but that didn't stop the Puritans from executing. And the rebellion against the labor practices of the ocean, which were, of course, practiced for the horrific labor practices of the Industrial Revolution, did not, of course, stop the Industrial Revolution from coming into being. But it matters still that pirate democracies existed. Little pieces of anti-capitalism, mutual care, theatrical ridiculousness. Just like it matters that labor unions fought for our right to earn decent wages and have time to rest. Just like it matters that pirates were able to free some kidnapped enslaved folks. That sailors of the American coast for 200 years helped smuggle self-emancipated folks to freedom from slavery, even after piracy was repressed. This is what Marcus Rediker's research has done since I read his stuff in undergrad, apparently, and he just published this fabulous book, which I've been loving, super recommend. I just got it from my library. It's called Freedom Ship by Marcus Rediker. Libertalia, real and imagined, matters. It's a vision of a paradise on earth, a paradise of community. My seminary professor, Reverend Dr. Rebecca Parker, and her feminist theology and history collaborator, Rita Nakashima Brock, wrote in their text, Saving Paradise, that entering paradise in this life is not an individual achievement, but is the gift of communities that train perception and teach ethical grace. Paradise provides deep reservoirs for resistance and joy. Paradise provides deep reservoirs for resistance and joy. It calls us to embrace life's aching tragedies and persistent beauties, to labor for justice and peace, to honor one another's dignity, and to root our lives in the soil of this great and difficult earth. That's something I've been thinking a lot about, right, with how hard it is in our new digital lives with the rise of so-called AI to distinguish fact from fiction. What do we root ourselves in? What do we root ourselves in? How do we root our lives in the soil of this great and difficult earth? The forces of empire and capitalism and religious zealots, the Puritan leader who killed the last great American pirates is the same one who led the Salem witch trials, right? May have killed off a lot of the justice-seeking pirates, but not all of them. And their stories, the stories they spun like yarn into rope to rig the sails of their ships, those stories lived on and live on. They lived on in the work of the labor unions, and they live on in us. Stories of folks willing to defy the entire world for a chance to be in real community with each other in new and ancient and meaningful ways. Stories of adventure and romance and defiance against the evil of capitalism and the dehumanizing era of industrialization. Stories that defy rigid notions of gender and sexuality, of what is expected. If you haven't heard of Anne Bonny and Mary Read, absolutely look them up if you want to think about that. Stories of pirates give us hope for a world beyond the rigid and exhausting bounds of capitalism and empire. Give us hope for a world where people matter to each other, not for what they can produce, but for themselves, where what we have is shared equitably. We care for the sick and injured and disabled. We prize theater and the arts and storytelling. Everyone comes together to create the rules we live by. We can find ways to live into that promise, to create places for this vision of paradise, to be heterotopias centered in love and working together for liberation. This is how we continue to feed the seed of change for a better world, even in the midst of the worst that fascism can throw at us. Friends, we all live together on this beautiful blue boat home, and we can liberate ourselves and each other. I invite you to rise now in body, voice, or spirit to sing together hymn number 1064, that's 1064, Blue Boat Home. The words will be on your screens. Here in DC and where you are and all across this land, may we, comrades, see each other gifts and wisdom and work together with imagination and compassion and courage to sail our ship toward liberation. The seas will be rough. The winds and currents may not always push us the direction we long to go. Sometimes we may run aground. But there is another truth. You are not alone. May you find treasures wherever you go, sailing safely over rough waters and weathering the waves' dips and crests. May your compass be true and your voyage home bring you ever more insight, laughter, generosity, and love. As you find new horizons and explore the wide expanse of your lives, may you go lifted up and love bless your way. May moonlight, starlight guide your journey. Blessed be. Amen.